Hey guys, and welcome to the 6th Ranger. As it is of course Saturday, that can only mean one thing, and that is that episode 2 of Dino Fury has been released, which means whether you want it or not, you're gonna get my thoughts, opinions, and review of the episode. Now, of course, there will be a spoiler warning from this moment on, so if you haven't seen the episode, be sure to go and check it out before watching this review. Okay, let's get into it. In case you haven't seen my review on episode 1, you can go back onto the channel and check that out to see what I thought of that before moving on to this one. I'm going to start with some overall general positives and feedbacks of the episode before I move into the details. Again, very similar to episode 1, I thought the general filmmaking and choreography of the fight scenes in this was very good. There were some extra things that I picked up on this episode when they began expanding on our characters a little more that I actually really enjoyed. Now, bear with me on this because this is going to sound a little strange as it's Power Rangers, but I actually liked how they almost grounded this series in reality a little more than in past seasons. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, of course, it's a show about humans that are turning into superheroes through some magical morpher on their wrists, and they're fighting alien creatures from outer space and things like that. It's not really grounded in reality in that way, but the episode opens with our three current heroes, the Red, Pink, and Blue Rangers, practicing their morphing sequence. Now, this isn't really something we've ever seen. In past seasons, we only really get our heroes receive their morphers and they just kind of know what to do. But in this one, we see them actually practicing and rehearsing the form as such, almost as if it's like a kata or something like that, to make sure they absolutely nail it. I thought that was a great touch. On top of that, there's also nice little details like, for example, how our Red Ranger is dressed. Yes, he hides his antenna before going to speak to the general public, but when he meets with the Blue Ranger's mother and the police officer, or the sheriff, whatever he is, they don't really mention anything about the way he is dressed, because let's be honest, he's not really dressed particularly human. And I thought it was a good nod that the police officer actually kind of looked him up and down, and you could see him question, what is this guy wearing? Now, I feel like things like that in past seasons of Power Rangers have never really been picked up on. And yes, it's a kids show, so those sort of attention to details aren't really necessary, but I like it. Now, having said all that, one thing that did really bug me is in that same particular scene. We know in this series the Power Rangers exist. They've existed in the past because when our heroes receive their powers, they know that they have become Power Rangers. There's even a line in episode 1 where they say something along the lines of, if you watch the news, I think we get Zord. Something like that. So we know that Power Rangers exist within this universe. That's a given. So why on earth, when they are trying to describe to the police officer or the sheriff about these aliens, these sporgs that are on the loose, he just doesn't believe them. He just shrugs it off as ridiculous and unbelievable. But in a universe and a world where Power Rangers exist, surely the public should be very used to alien attacks. They are a very common occurrence. So that kind of bugged me. I feel like in his role, in his world, that's something he should be taken very seriously. Okay, let's talk specifically about the episode itself. We don't really get too much information in terms of the grand lore of Power Rangers. For example, in episode 1 we had the lore masters and the mention of more morphing grid stuff, and the fact that our Red Ranger is the first ever Red Ranger. He's 65 million years old, making him the original. So that was a huge bombshell in episode 1. We didn't get anything of that manner. I think the biggest thing in this episode was maybe the end scene where we see that the Void Knight does have a grand scheme. He's collecting the power of these sporg things to be able to boost up this machine. Whatever this grand plan is, I'm sure it's evil. Now let's backtrack and go to earlier on in the episode. As I said earlier, we do start with the Rangers practicing their morphing sequence, which I enjoyed, and then we get the introduction of these booster keys, which I definitely like the idea of. What I don't like is, again, I talked about this briefly last week, but I don't like this toy pushing prop stuff. So what I mean by that is, these are clearly designed to be aimed at kids. They look plastic, they look like little toys, they do not look like something that would give you a power boost in a battle. I'm not stupid. I know that this, in the grand scheme of things, is a kids show and it's not aimed at an adult market, so there's no need to please us adult fans. the show would exist with or without its adult market. But I don't understand why something like that would need to have that plastic little figurine look. It doesn't make sense. It just wouldn't look like that. But again, I will accept it. A few moments later then, when the Rangers are back in their base, they reveal that they stole the Void Knight's energy reader. Now in this scene, again, we really see that this season's Blue Ranger is going to be the brains, talking about how he's going to use this alien technology with his mother to come up with something better. Soon after this, after reporting the incident of the missing aliens to the police and or the sheriff again, we then get our 3 Rangers heading to the social media work of our Pink Ranger. I believe it's called Buzz Blast. Now I found this scene very, very strange. The, I guess, boss of Buzz Blast reveals that she has a new assistant, some kind of droid who signs papers for her really, really quickly, and then picks up the papers that she just threw all over the floor into a nice, neat little pile. The scene doesn't really make much sense to me. I don't know why it was necessary, but I'm assuming that that droid, or robot, whatever she is going to go on to have some kind of impact, whether it be to help the Rangers, maybe as a mentor or an additional Alpha 5 type character, or whether it will eventually be recruited by Void Knight and be an enemy. That is yet to be seen, but I'm sure she will have some importance. We then get back to the Dino Henge, where Void Knight and one of his monsters is trying to break back under the floor of Dino Henge into the base to re-steal his energy reader. They then hide as they are interrupted by the Blue Ranger and his mother, and when the Blue Ranger is called away for a monster attack, the Void Knight then takes advantage of this by taking the Blue Ranger's mother. We don't yet see this on screen, however. The 3 Rangers are back dealing with the monster attack. This is where we see the first morphing sequence. Now, as a Power Ranger fan, I'm sure you will all agree that the first proper morphing sequence at least, is a big deal. I'm in 2 minds about this sequence. The sequence in general, I thought, looked fantastic. As soon as the morph begins, I thought the visual effects looked great. The way they turn their morphers in this full 360 movement, unleashing this energy circle before the morphing sequence begins, I genuinely think looked great. Then, the sequence itself, again, special effects look fantastic, probably the best we've seen so far, which you would expect from the latest season. However, taking one step back, the movements going into the morph, while they were cool movements, I think looked particularly robotic, especially from our Red Ranger, who it just didn't come across smooth. The way he turned left and right and then back to center, telling his fellow Rangers that their movements were smooth, it felt very unnatural and very, very forced. Again, going back to the plastic toy-looking morphers and these keys that go into them, it kind of ruins the whole effect to me. I don't see what's wrong with the good old metal morphers from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, or the wrist ones from In Space or Zeo. They all just, to me, looked better quality. Again, I'm repeating myself here, but it's going back to this toy feel, which, as an adult fan, I'm not a fan of. Once the Rangers are morphed, we then have our first Spork monster, which I was not a fan of. She was annoying, didn't particularly look very cool. Why can't we go back to these cool looking monsters that we used to have back in the day? Now they just, well, again, they just look like monsters from a kids show. It's a shame, but I think my expectations are too high as an adult fan. Then we get the first use of one of these power booster key things, used by the Red Ranger. Now, the way they are used are cool, putting them in the front of the Tyrannosaurus Rex head thing on the sword. I thought it was cool, the way it kind of pumps in to be powered was great, but then we see its use. It's a stink bomb. I thought that was ridiculous, I thought it was stupid, and I guess the kind of semi-battleizer armor that appears from these power boosters, again, very, very pointless. I know it's to sell figures, I know it's for additional extra things to put in stores, but this huge shoulder pad that appears, what is that? Is that necessary to use the power that he uses, to drop the stink bomb? When we see these used again later on in the episode, is that giant shoulder thing necessary? No, it's not. It looks ridiculous, it's not practical, I can't get on with it, and I never have been able to get on with these extra battleizer armor type suits. They are stupid. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, a lot of stick for that. I know many Power Ranger fans are fans of these sort of additional armor pieces. They're not for me. I just wish they would scrap them. The episode then kind of subverted my expectations when the Red Ranger finishes off this monster in one blow, but another appears, giving the Rangers more trouble. The first monster then reappears, and they join forces and go off and join Void Knight under his command. I like the fact that Void Knight is building his own army, using these sporgs along with the henchmen. Very cool. I've never particularly liked it when this sudden enemy force has appeared out of nowhere where they have maximum strength from the very start. Like, why have they never been heard of before? How did no one stop their rise to power? I prefer the way this is done. He's appeared, he's a bad guy, and now he is growing his army while he is there. And we don't quite know what his goal is yet, but I'm sure it will be revealed in no time. Finally then, skipping forwards to the end of the episode, we get to see our first Zord. I believe it was called the T-Rex Champion Battlezord? Or the T-Rex Champion Zord in battle mode. Either way, when it first came out, I was a big fan. I thought it looked absolutely fantastic. The control room that the Red Ranger stands in looked great. The way he puts his sword down to control it was very cool. My only negative point about this is the more that you look at this Zord, the more it looks like it's made out of Lego. The CG has improved tenfold over the years. I used to hate CG Zords. I was always a big fan of the practical use. But this one, genuinely, it looked good. And some shots I wasn't actually sure whether they were using CG or whether it was real. But the more I looked at it, the more the arms and the chest and the legs, they just look like they're made of Lego. It looks purely plastic. And while I'm aware that it probably is, it just doesn't look as good as the old ones. And no, I genuinely don't think I'm saying that out of nostalgia or just pure love for the old seasons. It just doesn't look as good. The design is great, but the look and the feel of it is not the same. It doesn't look powerful. I can't feel its power through my TV like I would have 20 years ago. I'm sure you all know what I'm saying, but overall it's not a general complaint. I didn't hate it. That's the important thing. Finally then, the big, almost plot twist at the end of the episode is we find out that when the Sporgs have been defeated, they gain more power. So Void Knight arrives, collects the Sporg and puts it into his machine, trying to gain power within the machine for his grand plan. Once again, we don't know what that is, but I for one am looking forward to finding out. My final thoughts on this episode are, I certainly didn't enjoy it as much as the first episode. I didn't hate it, I didn't dislike it, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I was certainly hoping that we would have a bigger Ranger team by this point. I don't see it necessary to give us a big wait for the full team to appear. I always enjoy, waiting for the 6th Ranger to appear midway through a season, but I don't think you need to drip feed the team to us. Just give us the Ranger team of 5 and let us be excited for the appearance of the 6th and final Ranger. Again, this series has kind of shocked me. I'm enjoying it far more than I thought I was going to. To be honest, I was not looking forward to this season at all. I've just been looking forward to Hasbro finishing their agreement with Toei Animation, moving away from the Sentai counterpart and just being their own thing. Redesigning Power Rangers. I think there's a lot of good stuff that can be done with this brand, with this franchise. So I kind of wrote off Dino Fury, but I'm surprised. I'm genuinely enjoying it. And I'm already looking forward to next Saturday's episode, which hopefully you guys will tune in next week and check out my thoughts on it. Be sure to let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Did you like it? What did you think of the Zord? That's the thing that I'm most interested in. Did it look too Lego, too plastic to you as well, or is that me being picky? I know I'm really fussy when things look like toys and look like they're aimed at kids, which they are, and that is a bit of a silly complaint on my behalf, but I can't help it. I'm just being honest with my feedback. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to what I had to say about this episode, and I will see you next time on The 6th Ranger.